My name is Dr. Evans Brown, Vice President of the Executive Affairs and East District School Representative. Today, we are very excited about a school that's under my purview, School 82, um, with the esteemed guidance of Dr. Caresses and Tamika Cedric. The school is on their way, and you'll be excited too after this presentation. So, with no further ado, I'm going to turn it over to Dr. and Superintendent Tanya Williams to introduce and lay the platform for today's presentation.
Thank you so much, Vice President Dr. Kathy Evans Brown. You know, we have so much history in our city and in our district, and initiatives like this keep that history alive for our upcoming generations. I think we had a meeting about, I don't know, a week or two ago. My weeks are running together. Dr. Evans Brown and myself met with the school leadership, and it was just a really exciting meeting. I was enlightened about quite a bit. I knew Mr. Peoples very, very, very well, and knew him for a very long time, know his family, and he's been, active in the community. He was just a member of a fraternity, and as I have known Mr. Peoples, he's always been committed to public education and specifically to the Buffalo Public Schools. And so I will turn things over to, I believe, the principal of the school. It's a school in good standing. It's a great school. And Dr. Lewis is doing a fantastic job over there with her associate, Ms. Cedric. I will turn things over to you, Dr. Lewis.
There you go. Thank you so much, Superintendent Williams. Good evening to the esteemed superintendent and the board members. As Dr. Williams stated, I am the proud principal of ECC School 82. My name is Tracy Michelle Lewis, and I also have with me to help with this presentation, Ms. Monique Funderburg, who also serves as our guardian of equity here at ECC 82. We're both excited and honored that you have given us an opportunity to do this presentation for you in hopes of being able to successfully rename our school after a man that is so deserving of this honor. So without further ado, Ms. Funderburg is going to walk us through the PowerPoint.
Thank you. Hello, good evening, everyone, and thank you for your time. Ubuntu, I am because we are. This is regarding the renaming of our school, number 82. Ronald Peoples, July 26, 1933 till April 2nd, 2020. Next slide. So this is the proposed name of ECC 82, the Ronald Peoples School of Scholars. Mr. Peoples, I was told, really believed in not just using the word student, but he believed in having all students called scholars. So as we go into this, who was Ronald Peoples? Next slide. Ronald Peoples, the early years. Ronald Peoples served in the United States Navy for 2 years and was honorably discharged. He attended the St. Cloud State College in St. Cloud, Minnesota, graduating in 1962 with a Bachelor of Science in Elementary Education and Special Education. Mr. Peoples continued his education at the State University College at Buffalo, where he earned a Master's of Arts degree in Special Education. He completed a certificate for advanced study in educational administration and supervision at the same institution. Next slide, please. His career in education. Mr. Peoples has the distinction of being the first African-American male teacher at ECC 82. He was also the first African-American supervisor for the city of Buffalo. Whether it was as a counselor or simply being a role model, he was also there for children. He held accommodations and commendations for his work with youth. Mr. Peoples, his life. Mr. Peoples is a member of Omega Psi Phi Fraternity Incorporated, the Archie Hunter Foundation, the Black Educators Association, Neighborhood House, Retired Teachers Association. He was also a volunteer for the Buffalo Board of Education Mentoring Program and the YMCA Mentoring Program. His accomplishments go on and on. We were only able to list a few for this PowerPoint. ECC 82 could not be prouder and more excited to have our building named in honor of Mr. Ronald Peoples. His persona and the charisma exemplify the qualities that we want our students to aspire to achieve as citizens in our community. Mr. Peoples looked for and encouraged the best in every person he encountered. He is a role model and a pillar of our community. He was the first African-American teacher at the School 82, and he has left a legacy of higher standards and expectations. He believed in being athletic and an advocate for change and educational growth. Next slide. So where are we? These are our current and next steps in order for us to have our school renamed Ronald Peoples School of Scholars at ECC 82. Please hit each section. Our first public meeting was actually held on February 15th. We are currently now we had a meeting with our superintendent on March 28th. We are currently doing a presentation to the board at its education work session. We are gathering our signature petitions and they are due April 15th. I've been told that we have over 200 electronic signatures and we have about 250 paper petition signatures. We'll have our second public meeting on April 23rd. It will be here at School 82. It will start at 5 p.m. and we would like to invite you to join us. We are working on completing our resolution by April 30th. The resolution will be tabled on May 15th by the board meeting, and the resolution will be removed from the table at the June 12th board meeting. So this is our mission statement for our school here at School 82. Our scholars will call and respond every morning through our announcements. So, okay. So we do have them on recording here, but it seems not to be working, but we are ECC 80 School.
We are the Ronald Peoples School of Scholars.
We are a collaborative community.
We are present.
We are positive.
We are prepared.
We are respectful.
We are responsible.
We are ready to learn and work.
We are
scholars.
We are
scholars.
We are
Ronald Peoples School of Scholars. So our scholars will say that every morning. If we push that play button, you can actually hear them saying it, but they've already been practicing. So as we listed some of his accolades, I just wanted to make sure I reviewed this. Mr. Peoples taught in Buffalo Public Schools for over 34 years, holding positions as elementary school teacher, special education teacher, supervisor of elementary education. He was also director of adult basic education. He also worked as a youth guidance counselor at the Community Action Organization. I mean, the accolades and the things he accomplished in the community go on and on and on. In 1997, he worked as a case manager and a court liaison at the Community Action Organization. And Mr. Peoples was a 60-year member of Bethel AME Zion Church. So when we talk about his community and how he served his community, we could not be more honored than to have our school named after him.
His daughter, Dr. Monica Peoples, was employed many years with the Buffalo Public School District. And she was so kind to loan us some of his personal effects that you see on the screen. It actually sits on a table in our hallway, and we are trying to acquire a case to put those things in. He did pass in April 2nd, 2020 during COVID. So this is a huge honor for him, and it's something that his children are greatly appreciative of, because when he passed and it was COVID, the only person that sat in that funeral home with him was his daughter, Dr. Monica Peoples. So his life couldn't even be celebrated at the end. So this is another opportunity to not only celebrate his life, but his accomplishments in life. And this is something that will be lifelong on the east side in the city of Buffalo. And we're very, very proud to sponsor Mr. Ronald Peoples as having the name for our school, for our scholars.
Well, thank you so much, both of you, Dr. Peoples, it's the end of the day, Dr. Lewis and Ms. Funderburg. I've seen this presentation. This is my third time. The first time was in February when they had their first public meeting. It was well attended, and I had an opportunity to meet Mr. Peoples' daughter, the one that you're speaking about now, Dr. Monica, and she's so proud. I think she was employed with the district for some time as well, right? Close to 30 years or so. And so the legacy moves on. And on the east side of Buffalo, as you know, there's a majority minority population, in your school. So it's kind of nice that children will get an opportunity to see another school named after an African-American male. So I'm going to open the floor if you have any questions at this time. Raise your hands or just let me know and I'll chime you in. Any questions, board members? Okay, Sharon Cotman is first. Sharon, President Sharon Cotman, you have the floor.
Thank you. So certainly I knew Mr. Peoples from early on. He was a teacher in the school that I attended, and we had a relationship, a lifelong relationship. Very proud. I'm very proud of me, and along with Joseph Murray. The history in this district really needs to be written to reflect what happened during that era of the Joseph Murray era, the talent that he brought to City Hall that had never been allowed in the door prior to that. And I like to call him Joseph Murray's entourage, because he made sure that he brought a lot of strength down to City Hall, a lot of diversity, to say the least. One thing that I noticed is that I do not see where you have published it in the newspaper, so you will. That is a requirement.
It has been published. Okay. I'm sorry. It has been published. It was published prior to the February 15th public meeting, and it is currently being published again by both the Challenger and the Criteria in enough time for our April 23rd meeting.
Okay, because that's important, and it wasn't noted. It has to be a public record of that. My only other question is, and of course I know Mr. Peoples' daughter, worked with her when I first came on the board. I am curious to know what other type of resources can come to the school through his affiliations. He is part of a fraternity. His daughter, Monica, has all sorts of resources up her little sleeve, not even her big sleeve. And I just like to make sure that if we name this, or when this happens, that Mr. Peoples, the resources flow with him. I did go to his memorial that they had for him after COVID, and it was very touching. And I'm thinking now, Lump was there, and he's no longer with us. Um, Mr. Lewis, Howie Lewis is no longer with us, but his brother is with us. So we're missing an opportunity to document some history here of what happened, Madam Superintendent. We've got all these projects that our kids are doing. I would like to see maybe our culturally linguistic responsive initiative take on documenting the history of what has happened in Buffalo Public Schools with the infusion. And if you know anything about Mr. Murray, his infusion, he was one of the first people to talk about culturally or relevancy, about bringing in diversity. He was one of the very first people to talk about it and to do something about it. Asa Hilliard lectures were an example of that. And I even think he had a name for it. I'll have to ask my sister what the name was at that point. But just so you know, these guys they came down with a vengeance, and they illustrated what excellence in education should be. And certainly Mr. Peoples deserves to be recognized. And I just hope the resources through his fraternity and some of the other organizations flow. I would like to see maybe that his church to adopt the school and do things with them. Dr. Lewis, as you politely told me that you will be retiring very soon, but you wanted to make sure that the school was in good standing before you did so. So I want to take this opportunity to thank you as well, and your other staff members as well, for the work that they're doing. But certainly Mr. Peoples was a gentleman and a man worthy of this title. Thank you.
Thank you, President Cotton. The fraternity, Omega Psi Phi, they are 100% behind what we're doing in the building. And they actually are going to be the ones, I believe, to try to purchase a cabinet for his personal effects that will be displayed in the building. They came out in full force for the first meeting. We're expecting them to be in full force for the second meeting. And the other meetings leading up to the actual naming. And in September, we're looking for not just Omega Psi Phi, but the Divine Nine to support this. I followed Will Smith at School 63. He turned it over to me over on Minnesota Avenue before they turned it into apartments. So I was very familiar with Lum. I was familiar with Mr. Peoples. My dad went to school with Lum, Cal Baxter, Gil Hargrave, that whole set. We do have a lot of rich history that should not be forgotten, because if it hadn't been for these men and women, I stand on their shoulders.
Absolutely.
I literally stand on their shoulders, and we should do something more tangible to and inclusive of the African American history and education here with the Buffalo Board of Education.
It certainly has not been documented. I would like to see us do something. We were at a convention and we saw that another district did something like that. And so I really would like that. I planted the seed today on fertile soil, so I'm sure it's going to grow some roots somewhere. Thank you. Thank you for the work you're doing also. You took that school and you turned it around, and kudos to you.
Thank
like
you so
I
much.
told you, when you retire and don't do something for children, your body goes in shock. So you just can't just leave us.
No, I don't. I don't plan on leaving totally, but
Okay.
I will be around. I will be around. And the work, thank you for the recognition of the work, but I must say I have a fabulous staff behind me. And if it were not for my staff and the love that they have of children and dedication, it would never have happened. I was only the captain in the ship, but you know, the soldiers, they had to do the work.
Teamwork makes the dream work. Yeah, let's keep it going. I love it. Thank you.
Absolutely.
Thank you.
Right. Well, thank you, President Cotman. Any other comments? Okay, Board Member Hurd, I see you in the City Hall. You're up next.
Yes, thank you, Chairwoman. First, I'd like to say thank you, Dr. Michelle Lewis, for the work that you're doing, and also Mrs. Thunderbird, because this is unprecedented. And just like to say, I met Mr. Peoples at church. So to me, he was a spiritual man, and he always gave great guidance, to us when we was younger. And he always lifted us and told us, what we can be and what we gonna be. It wasn't just like putting some kind of message out there that if we try hard, we can do this. It's like you're gonna work hard and you're gonna do this. And I just like that the thing he distilled in us as a younger youth. And I know he taught in the schools, but he was a great speaker on behalf of African Americans and young men. Especially he addressed young men and them working hard to achieve their goals and their dreams. So I just appreciate him for that. I did speak with his daughter, Dr. Monica Peoples, a couple of times. She reached out to me about this initiative, and we met and spoke and talked about this. And this is something that very pressing for her, and that was on her heart. And this does hold great value for me because I did go to school 82. I went to school 82 for 4th, 5th, 6th grade. Experience excellent. Can everyone mute, please?
Mute.
Okay. Yeah, I did go to school 82, and I went to a Catholic school. Then my first time ever going to public school was in 3rd grade at school 82, and that was a year I learned how to fight. So it was alive at the school that we went through. It was every day. It was going on constantly, and I just love to see the change and what's going over at the school. There we had Principal Mitchell. She was an African American principal, and I only know her by Miss Mitchell because we was only allowed to know adults or grown-ups by their last name and call them Mr. or Miss back then. But also Mrs. Teresa Pope was a principal there also. So those are two ladies that really, curved me, about not going the wrong way. So that school 82 holds a lot of value for me, and anything that we can do to push this momentum, I'd love to be part of it. So please include me, and thank you.
Thank you, Board Member Hurd. Any other comments? Okay, if not, wow. Okay, so Dr. Williams, I'm gonna give you the opportunity to close this session out.
Well, I guess the things that I'm hearing are so great. I'm hearing them twice. So I won't be long at all. I will just say great job.
Thank you.
Great job.
Thank you, and we'll look forward to your timeline. Oh, that's better. Yay, we'll look forward to your timeline, Dr. Lewis and Ms. Thunderbird. Thank you so much. Okay, this concludes the Executive Affairs for 10/24. Half hour? Hey, all right.
Madam Chair, before you conclude, can I ask you to consider adding something to your future agenda, please?
Sure.
I would like to have your committee look at the procedures associated with getting after school clubs established, the guidelines, complete review of that. I'd like to know what's the procedure. I need to know, I think we need to take a look at that and make sure that we are uniform across the district. And so is it possible to put that on your bucket list for things that we can take a look at? I think it's important that we do that under Executive Affairs because there may be some policy guidelines that need to be tweaked. So if you would be kind enough to move that to your agenda in the near future, I appreciate it.
No problem. Duly noted.
Thank you.
All right. So that concludes the Executive Affairs for today, for 10. Next, I will turn it over to Honorable Cindy McCutcheon, Chairperson, North District member. She's in City Hall.
Thank you, Dr. Kathy Evans Brown. Much appreciated. I know that there will likely be a lot of questions that we'll have. So first, I just want to thank Chief Barnes and his team. This is a lot of work, and seeing kind of the behind the scenes that what goes into it. I just want to commend y'all for the efforts and everything that you've been doing. And I absolutely look forward to the budget update. Before I hand it over to you, Madam Superintendent, don't know if there's anything you want to share. Otherwise, we'll hand it over to Chief Barnes.
Sure, just briefly, I want to thank you for sharing that this is a lot of work. And I hope that the board and any listeners that are listening this evening will see the work and the thought and the mindfulness that is going into presenting where we are now with this budget. We all know that it is a difficult year. It's a difficult year for everybody with respect to the budget. You don't lose $90 million and it not be difficult, but we are working really hard and strategic and mindful. And I hope that what you hear tonight and see tonight, and we're able to answer questions so that you know and understand that, you know, it's a courageous budget. It's a challenging year. We're not trying to do everything just in one year. That would be heartless. That would be not good for children. And so, you know, we have come up with a tiered 2-year process. That's what's necessary. And it might even be a little longer as we get into it. It might end up being a 2-letter A budget, but for now, we're trying as hard as we can to mitigate the loss of the resources that we know our children need. So I will turn things over to Chief Barnes to take us through this budget.
Thank you, Superintendent, and thank you, Ms. McCutcheon. For all this work, I just want to say I absolutely have the best staff around. They do phenomenal work. Maria Wood and Danielle Schwanekamp, they're with us today, but you'll meet more of them as we move through the budget process. Superintendent, I think you set it up perfect for me. If you look at the third line in the title, it's a 2-year plan to align our staff counts to enrollment. Our 4-year plan, going back almost 2 years, incorporated all of the developments that we're dealing with now, student loss, a new teacher contract, the end of our Besser. So we knew it was coming well ahead of time, much deeper than just the loss of $90 million, but structural issues. And we built up a very strong district reserves in order to enable us to get through this restructuring in a calm, orderly, and I'm going to borrow a word from the superintendent, mindful process. So we're taking a 2-year look to work our way out of these structural issues. Another factor that went into this development of the 2-year plan by the superintendent is really a great concern over all 7,000 employees, not one being greater than the other, all 7,000. So there's no promises that there won't be layoffs at the end, but I guarantee you we are all, spearheaded by the superintendent, putting in the best efforts and the best thinking to avoid that. Edmund, next slide.
It's not Edmund.
No. Okay, I got it. Thank you. We always start out with 3 goals for the superintendent. Superintendent, would you like to add anything?
No, I think, you know, we've been very public about what our goals are. And so you've listed them here. I think all of the board members know, certainly all of our cabinet knows what our goals are. And we know that to achieve the goals, the children will need resources and supports. And so as much as we can, you know, we've been mindful about the budget and making sure that we have in place what we need to help us meet the goals.
Thank you. Next slide, please. I'm going to briefly go over what we're going to cover tonight. We're going to talk about the big picture. We're going to talk about the budget process, levels 1 through 5. I'm throwing that in here because this year everything seems to be condensed and more chaotic and filled with more anxiety, but we're operating well ahead of our typical budget schedule. We're going to take a look at the school-based budget versus Munis FTE reconciliation.
I'm sorry. Sorry, please. Can everyone please mute?
We're going to take a look at the school-based budget Munis FTE calculation at a super high level. Then we're going to have an update on our plans to mitigate layoffs. We're going to review the level 2 budget summary, the level 2 budget detail, and then discuss what happens in level 3, which we are now in. I'll mention a couple things about our updated 4-year plan, which is also due June 30th, 2024. Next slide, please. So the big picture, the 2 challenges facing the district are the loss of the $90 million in our BESSER revenues, but more importantly, more structurally, more long-term, it's aligning total staff counts to our enrollment decreases. And this is happening in every district across the state and possibly even the country. Our enrollments are down 3,400 over the past 5 years, and our total staff counts are up 390. They're out of balance, and we need to get them aligned. The superintendent has decided upon a 2-year plan to address these structural issues that are facing the district. And this decision was based upon the abrupt loss of $90 million in funding. I know we all knew it was coming, and we discussed it, and it's been on our radar for 3 years, but it's still a cliff, and we lost $90 million overnight. Second factor was the continuing challenges facing our students. And the third factor that we based this 2-year strategy on is the financial strength of our district. I'm going to give you a quick update to the plan to mitigate and avoid layoffs. We've been communicating this now for months. We've tweaked it a little because we're diving into every nook and cranny about how to get the district through this. A hiring freeze, except for essential positions, remains in effect. We're cutting non-mandated vacancies at both the central office and the schools. We're going to start taking a look at reducing coach, TOSA, ITC positions and moving staff back to the classrooms. This plan does rely upon the use of projected retirements to not fill a number of them, and the use of district reserves in the 24-25 budget. The budget process will begin to address the district's structural challenges in the 24-25 year, and we'll develop a fiscally responsible update to our 4-year plan. The superintendent is keenly aware of the needs of our students, the schools, and the departments, and is more committed than anyone to provide the resources to meet those needs next year. But she's charged with another responsibility, and we need everyone to recognize it, that we have these structural issues with staff and facilities that we have to address. So balancing those two is a difficult job. But we think we got a plan that we're working through that'll give us a good result. Next slide, please. I just want to review quickly the budget process, the approval levels. These have been in place for 10 years now. Level 1 is the worst case budget scenario. We added in all the BESSER FTEs, and then, you add in the contract step and longevity increases, the benefit increases. That showed a $102 million deficit, worst case. It was as if we were running away from the problems. We just completed level 2, and that's what I'm reporting on now. This is based upon the governor's proposed budget. The formula-based school-based budget process is incorporated into the budget, and a superintendent equity holdback is established. Non-staff expenditure requests were entered by departments, and they were requested to be flat. And then benefits, charter tuitions, and debt service that all involve large calculations and projections, they were updated. And just to give you some perspective, our benefit expenditure is $226 million a year. Our charter school tuitions are $175 million a year. Our debt service will be actually $95 million next year. But those were all updated and put into level 2, and we're currently at a $79.8 million deficit. I'm going to report on the details of that tonight. And then level 3, revenues are going to be revised for the final state budget. The superintendent and I were talking. We've really never seen sort of the unified pressure on the governor to change some of the things in her budget. We've met with legislatures, senators, our Big Five lobbying group, in a real unified effort to make some common sense and almost promised changes to her budget. The superintendent during level 3 will put together a specific list of potential additional FTEs to add back into the budget. That'll be done in conjunction with the one-on-one meetings we're having with board members. And then we're going to have further meetings with all the departments to review the non-staff budget submissions. Hopefully, the level 3 budget will show a deficit a little bit less than the $79 million. And that was really at the end of level 3, which is in like 2-3 weeks, we're really getting close to proposing a final budget to the board. So everything is moving faster than it has in prior years and on schedule. I just wanted to assure everyone of that. Next slide, please. Okay, this next slide, I only want you to look at the bottom line numbers, and I'll tell you why. Remember, our strategy and intent is to mitigate layoffs. This chart was put in here to show that we're not blind or ignorant of the structural problems facing our district in terms of staffing and facilities. The data below is not a plan for layoffs, but it's to add some perspective to our discussions as we move through level 3. Very quickly, and I just indiscriminately assigned the rows. I just want you to look at the bottom line. The first column is the school-based budget, equity-based formulas. That provided the resources and the principals made the decisions. That resulted in 4,085 FTEs. The second column is like the current year FTEs. It includes all of our ESSER. That's at 4,423. That's a difference of, by this measure, in comparison, we have 338 more FTEs at the schools than the equity-based, school-based budget formula dictates. Again, this is not a plan at all for layoffs. It's just to assure the board that we know what's going on, we know the size of the issue in terms of overstaffing and possibly more too many facilities. The last column shows the amount of vacancies. Now that's what we're going to use in our plan to mitigate layoffs. We're going to be cutting vacancies. At the bottom, I know there's questions, especially when you get into stressful years like this, oh, the formulas aren't this or the formulas aren't that. So the super and I have talked about engaging with an expert third party to review the school-based budget formulas next year. But I want to caution everybody, it might end up with more stringent formulas, but I think a third party should look at it. Super and I also talked about conducting more regular classroom audits during the year, maybe quarterly. We do that for charter schools. And then lastly, the superintendent and I recommend that we begin looking at school building consolidations. And there's been some groundwork already laid for that, just gathering data. So this is just to add some perspective and data. Now, on the next slide, please. Here is an actual update to our specific plan to mitigate layoffs. A hiring freeze, that is going to remain in effect, except for essential positions. You know, you can't be bringing in new employees from the outside during this environment. It's not fair to them. It's not wise for the district. Mrs. Woods, I got your email right before the meeting, and I hope this goes to address some of those concerns. Our plan to right-size our staff for the lower enrollments, the biggest part of it is from vacancy cuts, not live bodies. We've identified 40 central office vacancy cuts that we've already made. That's 4.6% of the total central office count. We've identified 91 vacancies at the schools that we're going to cut. That represents 1.76% of the total school-based counts. I put the percentages in there to show, you know, we've looked at every department, central office, and the school, and those are the results so far of vacancy cuts, not live body cuts. I highlighted note number 4. The 131 vacancy cuts above, it's less than the total actual vacancies that exist. The difference is because we can't cut mandated positions, such as special ed vacancies, and we have to account for essential positions and hirings in progress. For example, I think there's 50 aides working through the civil service process. So while we report on a big picture basis to the board, the actual calculations and decisions that will have to be made, it's like working through a quagmire, which we're good at, but it's not always easy. It's okay, you got 300 vacancies, cut them. No, you can't cut certain ones, and then there's hirings in progress. I just wanted to mention that. We are going to take a look at eliminating some coaches, TOSAs, and ITC positions and moving the staff back to classrooms. That's in our preliminary analysis stage. You'll hear more about that as we go through level 3. Retirements. A key part of aligning our staff to enrollments and ensuring our financial health going forward is to not fill, we're saying 100 of the 300 people who retire every year. Again, Mrs. Woods, to your point, this is not impacting live bodies. That's a hard one to project. You don't know how many are going to retire or from which positions, et cetera. And then lastly, our plan to mitigate layoffs, a use of district reserve. The superintendent's committed to using a part of our district reserve to implement the plan to mitigate layoffs and to close the remaining deficit. Next slide, please. Okay, this slide, I don't envy the superintendent. Whichever way she goes, to be harsh, then she's criticized, or to not address everything in 1 year, she's criticized. I think this chart tells the story of why this 2-year strategy will work. It's really threading the needle, but that orange line, that's our budgeted FTEs, and the blue line is our enrollment. Look at the last set of data. It's 24-25 projected. Just based on the results to date, what we've discussed with you, for the first time, like in 10 years, we're bending that orange curve. It's not everything that in the perfect world, oh, you got 300 extra staff at the schools, cut them, lay them off. That's not the superintendent's plan. And yet, for the first time in 10 years, we're bending that orange curve down by 161 FTEs. and we're assuming enrollment stays flat. Why does that orange curve bend down? We're cutting central office vacancies, 40. We're cutting vacancies at the schools, 91. And we're hoping for 100 retirements to not be filled. Next slide, please. So I spent a large part of this discussion up till now is describing the structural issues and what's in our plan and what's not in our plan. Cutting live bodies at this point is not in our plan, but there's no promise that the financial constraints may dictate that. So real quick, where we are on level 2 in the green column. Our revenues right now are $1,082,000,000. That's the governor's proposed budget. Our expenditures are $1,162,000,000. That includes the school-based budget reconciliation, which reduces FTEs, and the superintendent equity holdback, which increases them, and all the step longevity and contract increases, including benefits, charter school increases. We'll go through some of those. That results in a $79.8 million deficit at the end of level 2. It's 20 million or so better than level 1. We are making progress. See the 4-year plan in yellow? It was only for $29,400,000 because the 4-year plan took a harsher look and said you're losing 90 million and you got 300 FTEs in ARPESA. It's a grant. Everything goes away. And that's how the 4-year plan sort of heavy-handedly dealt with both our structural issues in terms of declining enrollments and the end of ARPESA. So we're taking a 2-year strategy, a more nuanced approach. The last numbers, if we were to end our budget with a level 2 deficit, our audited fund balance is 375. You deduct the 79, we'd end next year at 295 million. Next slide, please. A quick look at some of the detail behind the revenue and expenditure numbers. This is the governor's budget plus some other revenue items. Revenues appear as negative numbers in Munis, and I just took this right out of the Munis system. Level 2 revenues are up 17.3 million or 1.6% from the current year. State aid revenues in the governor's budget are up 21 million or 2.3%. So level 3 revenues will be updated for the final state budget. I won't project anything there. It's going to be a couple weeks, but well, I will. If they change the CPI formula back to what was promised, we could probably get between $7 and $9 million more. There are other areas in here that we've been working on in terms of our internal audit program that I'll be discussing at a later date. But in the areas of special ed reimbursements and a couple of other areas, there is an opportunity for additional revenues. I started talking with the superintendent this week about it. It would entail a project. There's potential for additional revenues there. The point being, we're working every day to maximize our revenues. Next slide, please. Some detail on the expenditure number. Level 2's in yellow. In total, level 2 expenditures are up 59 million or 5.4% versus the 1.6% increase in revenues. The level 2 budget FTE count is up 166 in the general fund from the current year. This is the net impact of adding all those ESSER positions and then cutting 123 vacancies net. Lastly, how this will change in level 3, the level 2 FTE count includes the reduction of 388 school-based budget formula FTEs, but the addition of the $10 million superintendent holdback. That will all be finalized after the meetings with the board in the coming days. A couple of numbers I'll go through quick. Salaries, that's the result of the increase of 165 FTEs, but also the result of the cost of the contract increases for every union here, including the BTF. As your salaries go up, your benefits go up, 13 million. Our contracts right now are projected to be up 12 million. That's due to some ARP-related carryover items in IT and in the nursing contract. Also included in there is about a $2.9 million increase in Say Yes contracts for the 3-year-old pre-K and summer school. If you go down to equipment rentals and repair, that number's up. Well, no, that number's up because IT equipment of 5.7 million. This will be reviewed in level 3, but it's another rollout of additional student and PD related laptops. We also have 2.3 million in there for unaidable land improvements, the Riverside project and the installation of playgrounds. Lastly, the last biggest number is supplies, textbooks, and software. That's up 4 million. That's due to the latest WASED developments and some IT software and the Evolve scanner maintenance contracts of almost $1 million a year. Quickly, transportation is down. We will triple check this in level 3, but we're thinking that we can wring out that much in savings through fewer and better bus routes. Lastly, we are paying off our debt to the tune of almost $100 million a year. As we do, those debt payments get lower. They'll be almost $10 million lower next year. Next slide, please. Okay, the superintendent and I discussed this slide a lot. We are rightly focused upon the loss of ARP and the structural issues and the school-based budgets. But it's never a bad time to recognize some of the projects that are in next year's budget and that have occurred in the current year. This was due to the advocacy of the board and the administrative support for these efforts. So, that's all you might hear about is bad things and the horrible situation we're in. Security. Over the past 2 years, there's been an increase of 80 security guards. We've invested $3.8 million in school-based scanners, new wands, and walkie-talkies. All of that carries forward in the next year's budget. No one's touched it. Athletics. During this current year, 23-24, we increased the athletic budget by $3.4 million, or 62%. This increase continues into next year. It's in the level 2 budget. During the current year, we implemented enhanced academic supports for student athletes and additional unified sports, gymnasium, and fitness room upgrades. In 24-25 budget, we're going to be implementing boys and girls modified wrestling and cross country. Why is that? Over the past 2 years, we've invested over $4 million in this program, and the 24-25 budget includes an additional $3 million. IT investments. Over the past years, we have invested over $31 million in laptops, tablets. In the last 2 years, I mean the current year and the year before. Interactive whiteboards, instructional operational software, network security. You saw in the expenditure detail, further investment in IT is currently in the IT budget. Quickly, plant and capital projects. This doesn't have any bearing on next year's budget, but they're investments that we made over a very chaotic past 24 months, and we should be proud of the current status. School 8 for Da Vinci, 10 million. School 86 for the Academy High School, 3.5 million. The new wing at School 50, I think that was 9.5 million. We have funded All High Phase 3, Riverside Field, Fosdick Field, and we completed the installation of card access and intrusion system at every location. Lastly, what is felt in next year's budget is the financial impact of all contracts. They're settled. The cost increases are included in the budget, but I'm saying this from the positive perspective. We got 11 unions. All the contracts are settled. It brings stability to our planning. Two other things that the superintendent wanted to mention. We made changes to the summer school budget as part of our strategy to avoid layoffs and reduce costs. And we really, really want to take our hats off to Ann Botticelli, Katie Wilbur, Kelly Bauta, who moved 1,000 pieces and came up with plans. And there have been changes to the after-school budget. Again, as part of our strategy to avoid layoffs and reduce costs. Everybody can't get everything. But we think these are solid programs. Just they look different.
Chief Barnes, if I can just add, I just want the board for a moment to pause and recognize the good work that the board has helped to lead over the last couple of years. We've done a lot, and to see that these things at this point are still, you know, carrying forward is huge. What's not in there, I understand that at the last board meeting, some of our community-based partners came forward and had some concerns, but we were also able to do more with our community-based partners because we needed it. Our children are saying that they need that level of support. And at this point, you know, there is not an intention to reduce that. So, you know, what I hear Chief Barnes saying is that, you know, we're not going to be able to keep things the way they've always been, but we really are looking at student needs. We're looking at the impact of the work that's happening, and wherever we're able to, we're trying to make some very mindful decisions. So I just want us to pause and feel okay about at least some of the things that we've done over the last couple of years, because we've done a lot.
I agree. I agree, Super. Thank you. The board, these are your projects. The next slide, please. So what happens in level 3? We're now officially in level 3. Final state aid revenues will be put into the level 3 budget. The superintendent will decide upon the school-based FTE add backs. This may increase salaries and benefits in level 3. At the central office level, audit-related expenditure cuts and some revenue increases, they'll be input into level 3. Very reasonably, very practically, very conservative. Last thing you want to ever do is overstate your revenues. A further review of the department non-staff budget request or potential reduction in level 3. As the superintendent says, mindful and priorities. Everybody can't have everything. The budget department will update our projections on the $493 million we spend in benefits, charters, and debt service. Those calculations and projections are key. If you can conservatively and confidently project a percentage less here or there, that'll help our budget. But again, you never want to be short in any of those areas. We'll have further meetings with board members and cabinet to begin tomorrow. Next slide, please. A good solid 4-year plan is part of the reason why we can take this 2-year approach. So our updated plan is due June 30th. Just a reminder, we manage our finances in the short term with a detailed review of current year spending versus the approved budget. monthly monitoring of critical variables, quarterly reports to the board, and cash flow management. But more importantly, we project out and plan our district finances according to our 4-year plan. The projected consequences of the decisions we make every budget year and their impact on the fund balance. So the current issues regarding the loss of RPESR, enrollment decreases, necessary structural changes to staff and facilities, they were all included in our current 4-year plan. There's an example of one of the statements from it, but the 4-year plan will include projections for all our funds: the $1.2 billion general fund, the $130 million grant fund, the $100 million debt service fund, and maybe a $50 million capital project fund. The updated 4-year plan will also include, if the superintendent approves inserting that into it, our first borrowing in over 10 years to include funds for Da Vinci Buff State and some select project from the building condition survey. Okay, next and last slide. I was trained a long time ago by a guy who said, tell them what you're going to tell them, then tell them, and then tell them what you just told them. So we're at that last part. While focused on our short-term loss of our RPESR and the longer-term structural issues, we really shouldn't lose sight of all the good that's been accomplished the last couple of years, and that is included in the 24-25 budget again. We're in a better position to deal with the current challenges than most districts. Our plan, again, revolves around flat non-staff budgets, a hiring freeze, cutting vacancies, a review of the TOCHA coach positions, and utilizing retirements to avoid layoffs. That is our plan. No guarantee that it won't result in some layoffs as further betas and decisions are processed in level 3. But you saw where we are. We gave you a specific update on that plan. The 4-year plan is the key financial planning tool. The updated 4-year plan will include plans to keep the district in strong financial health as it meets these structural needs. One other reminder, from a financial planning and cash flow perspective, there's no longer going to be any substantial vacancy savings to rely on for budgetary savings, because we're cutting those vacancies to avoid layoffs. We just have to manage better with the resources provided in the budgets. There's no room for unbudgeted requests after the budget's been approved. A last thing to mention, at Danielle and Maria Wood here, and Chuck Silvermoza and Rachel and Kara, we're now bringing HR into the fold, so to speak, and they've been with us every step of the process in terms of the staffing counts and that, but their role is going to be elevated, and it's going to be a difficult chore, and we should appreciate that as they navigate through people getting bumped, people getting moved. Those things are going to happen in this plan to avoid layoffs, and they're going to play just a key role in it, and we're very happy to be working with them. Tammy, Michael, thank you. That's it.
Thank you, Chief Barnes. That was a lot of information as usual. You amaze me with how much you can get on one slide. I am always amazed by that, so thank you. I know that this is a little bit of a shift from what we have heard from you previously in terms of spreading it over the 2 years. So I think just for clarity purposes, and then we can open it up to questions, because I'm sure that my colleagues will have all sorts of questions and comments and thoughts that we can, you can answer, hopefully. But year one, with this projected shift or spread over 2 years, what are we looking at as kind of a financial impact? What are we absorbing in that space, figure-wise?
Here's a guesstimate.
Guesstimates work.
You see we're at 79 million. Okay. I'm gonna bet that'll range between, it should be between 70 and 79 million that the fund balance will absorb.
Okay. Additional based on conversation, right? Because we're spreading it now.
In total, next
total.
year,
Okay.
we'll need 70 million. And it's an important point that goes back to that one chart. We're not ignoring and we're not ignorant of the structural challenges. We're overstaffed at the schools. We're overstaffed in central office. We're right here for the first time in 10 years taking this. We'll cut at least 161 FTEs.
But it's just important so we all understand, we're not out of the trouble zone, right?
No.
That means that going into next year,
Correct.
there's
more work to be done.
There you go. And I just wanted to kind of clarify that and make sure we understood that we're spreading this out. And so this conversation will absolutely carry over. And that there'll be some really, I think, tough decisions and some deep conversations going into next budget cycle that should not be surprising to anyone.
Thank you.
By agreement in kind of spreading it out in that way. And the longer we spread, the more of that impact that we'll continue to feel.
And at some point, you can't keep incurring 70 million that you'll run out of fund balance or have the control board. We're
correct.
The superintendent monitor and discuss this very closely. We're comfortable even within that environment of doing something like this.
For 2 years.
Yep.
Got it. All right, colleagues. I don't know if you want to raise your hand. I don't know what the easiest way will be because I can't fully see the screen.
Can I make a quick announcement?
Yes, absolutely.
The draft school-based budget books that you received, we have bound copies for our meeting. This is not a public document. It's an internal work document for the board members to meet with the superintendent and discuss the current status of these, okay? This would be sending out just erroneous information at this point. It's not finished, it's a draft.
Noted. Awesome. Board Member Hurd, I think it's just convenient because you are right here to have you go first, and then we will.
Larry Scott. Larry Scott is next. After Board Member Hurd. I see
Thank
Larry's
you.
hand, Cindy.
Okay. I'll have Board Member Hurd start us, and then Kathy, if you might be able to tell me hands, I can't see them come up from here, so I will need that. It doesn't show up this way. So thank you.
Thank you. Thank you for that very detailed presentation, Mr. Barnes, and I know your staff, your team here has done a lot, trying to make sense of this. And Superintendent also, thank you for dedicating all the time and work, because as I watch the news every day, even out of state, I'm just hearing other districts already making cuts. Other districts are cutting teachers, or they're cutting teachers' aides. And I just like to see that, from what we're doing here with Buffalo Public Schools, is that taking our time and see what we value, and what's important to us, and try and find ways around. So thank you for taking the time to do this. Just a couple of questions. With this type of prospective rollout that we're doing for a 2-year period, how long would it be before we'll have to go into our reserves to try to balance the budget?
Part of doing it over 2 years is that we will immediately next year dip into our reserves $70-80 million.
70, 80?
Yeah, by spreading it.
And in her opening comments, that on top of the super saying mindful, she said courageous. That, she's taken a risk on this strategy, and her management team and her principals picking up the slack, making it work. It's a risk.
Okay. Just a couple of things. I would just like to just ask, can we target more programs, find out what works here in the Buffalo Public Schools and what's not working, what's underachieving. We work with exclusive programs and we're looking for ways to cut, and we have to cut. I think that we should look at the programs that work with our schools and our kids, and just to try to figure out, what can we apply, what can we invest more into, and what's not working, just by looking at the data at the schools, each building, suspensions, incident rates, long-term suspensions, short-term suspensions. I repeat the incidents again, the number of incidents that we're having, and with mental health agencies, who's working with our students on behalf of that and the families. So if we can take a deeper dive into that, maybe we can really adjust this a little more. The second thing is, what is our child tuition cost right now? I mean, what is each child receiving per year for school?
I haven't looked at the CMs. The foundation aid per pupil, that's what drives a lot of things. It's up to like $15,000 a child, I think. I can get you the exact number.
And is that expected to change next year, or remain the same under this formula?
We're waiting for the final state budget. Then they'll redo all the foundation aid calculations, including the aid per pupil.
Okay.
Right now, and it's about 15.
Like 15.6 it was before?
Yeah, something like that. Okay. But it's going to change.
I do want to keep an eye on that to see what the perspective look like next year and how we move forward with that. The last thing is I'd like to address is the partnerships. I would like for this district to take a deeper dive also on the partnerships. I see other school districts that work more with the universities that's attached to the city or want to help with programs or also educational values and teaching. We can really look into that to try to save jobs here, but also help encourage our students in education. If you need help with that, I'm always willing to work with that. We are working with some colleges already and some universities, so if we can try to adapt those and build those, I think that we can really make some great gain, and keep our current staff here. Thank you, Chairwoman.
Thank you so much. Board Member Larry Scott. Larry, you're muted.
Thank you, Board Member McEachen. First of all, Chief Barnes, thank you for providing information that I've been harping on for quite a bit now in regards to breaking down where the ESSER and ARP funds have been spent and where we've seen growth, in particular with TOSA positions, coaches, assistant principals. In looking at that chart that you provided in the presentation tonight that breaks down those increases,
yes.
Is it accurate for me to say, for example, for teacher on special assignment, that over the past 2 years, there's been a growth of 22 TOSAs?
The growth is, I'm going to say yes, but it could be even a little more. And Larry, this slide was put together with the grand totals in mind, just showing the cumulative impact of the overstaffing at the schools. We are working on an updated chart showing just what you're asking. And that'll be presented at level 3 as we go through the exercise with the board and the superintendent holdback.
Okay. And so then it's somewhat accurate to say that
yes.
There's been a growth in 16 assistant principals
yeah,
over the
correct.
past couple of years. Okay.
Correct.
And I just,
that's correct in general. Yeah. So,
I raise this again because if there's going to be reductions, they should be equitable. And I'm just wondering, and I will be asking more specifically in my meeting tomorrow in regards to school-based budgets, if there are any reductions in assistant principals, because as I've shared already, and I will ask further questions about tomorrow, As a parent, before I was a board member, I have experienced school-based budgeting being implemented with fidelity, transparency, inclusive of all stakeholders. I'm hearing, though, from some folks that that's not happening across the district in some buildings. And it concerns me when then I see a budget where a reading teacher is completely taken out of that building. So,
I'm sorry.
and then yet we're continuing the growth that we've seen in administration.
Larry, if I could make a comment to your observations of lack of fidelity and transparency, what I think, I know Maria Wood and her team. They are top flight. This process is transparent, thorough, almost exhaustive. And I think what you're running into when people don't get what they want nowadays, they say it's lack of transparency. They knew every factor, were trained, and these selections in that column are their choices.
I was going to say, Board Member Scott, one of the things that I learned is that, the finance team that, we're going to be meeting with and that you'll be meeting with tomorrow, right? Yeah. They're not the ones choosing where the FTEs are being distributed in the school. Correct. That's being done internally in the school. So it may be a little bit hard for them to answer that because, right, it truly is a question to the principal. So if I'm hearing you, like there might not be transparency on that level, maybe?
That's exactly what I'm saying, okay. Yes.
Okay.
I'm not in any way pointing the finger at Chief Barnes and his staff.
If I can just share that I had a meeting with the BTF about 2 weeks ago, and the president shared that he had, become aware of schools that the SBMT process they felt was not transparent. And so then I wanted to know, well, what is the scope of it? We've got 60 schools. Are we talking about 60 schools that are not, or are we talking about 2 or 3 schools that are not? And so each school, it was 3 that they've given me. And for each one of those schools, when I had the ASLs go back and drill down, it turned out that not one so far, 2 already have responded, was not being transparent. So I don't know, maybe tomorrow when we meet, I'll be able to hear a little more about some concerns that may have come your way. From some constituents, because I'm following up on it. It's very important. I've got my name out there saying that we're being transparent, we're being fair, we're being inclusive. So I stand on that. I'm very serious about it. So if it is not happening, I need to know.
No, I appreciate that, Dr. Williams. And I want to make it clear that I appreciate the transparency tonight and you really looking into the TOSA positions and all those positions where the staff are not working directly with our students. So, and you're being very transparent about it tonight. So that I completely appreciate. And I think my point though, supports the recommendation that I saw on maybe slide 2 or 3 about considering a third-party analysis of our budgeting process. Because to me, like for assistant principals, there should be some equity with assigning the amount of assistant principals in particular schools. And I'm not seeing it being equitable at this point.
Okay.
However, I will again make the point, I am not one where I feel like there should be a rigid formula for each school and there should be only a certain amount of staff for each school, because I think each of our schools is so different. The needs of each school, the interests, the focus of each school is different. So we shouldn't have strict, rigid formulas for staffing across all schools. There needs to be an understanding and an acknowledgement that each of our buildings is different. But I think with particular positions, such as assistant principals, there probably should be more equity in how those are being assigned.
Yeah.
I think the school-based budget is just the baseline. That's just the baseline. But the equity overlay is where we get into the equity piece. and knowing, looking at the data to see what schools really need, and looking at the trend, over the last 3 years. So there will be that piece of the equity coming in, but the school-based budget formula is just a baseline. That's kind of a starting baseline. But I don't disagree about the third party looking at it and seeing if there is a better way, an improved way.
Thank you. Those are all my comments.
Thank you. I can't see if hands are raised, so if someone can.
I think the president has his hand raised.
Yeah, Sharon's hand is up, and then after Sharon is Teresa Shuda.
Thank you. Madam President.
Good evening. Thank you for the presentation. I have a couple of questions. Jim, for your budgeting, had you included the windfall that happens every year for unbudgeted requests? Have you taken that into consideration at this point? Previous years, it's been as much as $16 million, $14, $11 million. Has any of that tied into this at all?
Indirectly, Mrs. Kaufman. It flows back in and enriches your fund balance, which the superintendent has agreed and planned to use to cover shortfalls this year. So indirectly, yes, it does. Does it go right back to the schools? No. Every year's a new year.
Okay. So we were told that in the future, or in the past, that when positions were not filled, okay, after the first semester, that principals would be allowed to use that money to benefit their schools. Somehow or another, that has not happened. And so what my concerns are is that if you're talking about school-based vacancies, removing them, how do we guarantee that the children are receiving what they need, particularly since the position was never filled and it was budgeted for? And some of these are years old. How do we guarantee with this vacancy reduction
Yes.
that children are not being penalized?
Oh, no, they won't. We guarantee that. These are monetary options as opposed to laying off live bodies. We need to get the vacancies, some of them been around for 2-3 years, out of the budget and free up those resources.
Right, I understand that, but why was it budgeted if it wasn't needed is my concern.
Oh, Mrs. Kaufman, I have my budget team here with sort of smirking because we're always up front with each other. We don't know. This comes out of the holdback, the excess over and above the school-based formulas. It's been 10 years in the making getting to this point. And the ARP-ESSER situation just put it on steroids.
So we have to figure out a way to make sure that equity happens to the schools that are not getting the teachers that they're supposed to have. There has to be a formula for that incorporated in this. I'm for a third party. I'm for a third party looking at everything, every position in this district, starting from City Hall all the way down. That's where I'd like to start with inside City Hall and work our way out into the schools. So I'm very much for that. I have some questions about summer school. We know that children, they for the most part digress over the summer. And now we have a goal set for our third graders to be reading at a certain level. How are we going to be ensured as a board that the children receive the resources they need to be a success for September if we're not having summer school?
So we have been meeting with David Rust with Say Yes, which is one of our premium partners, and they are very open to providing the instructional support that the children need. So, it may not be a person that is a Buffalo public school teacher in one of our schools, but they will have access to, some of the materials that we're using, And, you know, the science of reading, you know, I know we hear a lot about Orton Gillingham, but it really is just good old fashioned reading techniques that many of us learn to read by. And so David Rust and I, you know, he's committed to that. He is committed to making sure he knows our goal. He knows what we're focused on, and we'll be working very closely with him. And we may have some Buffalo Public School teachers, elementary certified teachers, that are working in his program this summer.
So how big is his program? Because I thought he was reduced also.
No, he's
How
not.
big, how many he's not. So how
reduced.
many students are we anticipating that he's going to be able to accommodate?
I'll be able to share that with you tomorrow. I don't have a number tonight, but I'll be able to share it with you.
Okay. The other concern I have is under the sports. In the conversations that we had in the past, we were talking about using sports to pull our children and to solidify our relationship with our children. I see that you're talking about improving unified sports. I'm not sure exactly what you're talking about doing as far as that. Maybe that's a conversation for a educational support committee. But when I saw that in modified sports, we were increasing wrestling and cross country, I got a little concerned because the original plans that I set in the committee's meetings, it took my time to go over there and work, was that we were going to put football in place. And the reason for putting football in place was to lock our kids in. We were going to lock our kids in the 7th grade, 8th grade, and then we move them into a program into our high schools, and it would be a nice transition. We would be able to groom that. When I see cross country, I see that as an easy lift. I don't see it as anything that we would not normally do. Wrestling is a plus, but what happened to the football? And that's the piece that I was most concerned with, because if we got the kids in there again at an early age, we lock them in, they become our students. We don't have to worry about them going anywhere else. So I'd like an explanation on what's going on with that, because that's what the original plans were. And I don't take my time out to come to meetings to see things get formulated and then all of a sudden they get changed and nobody explains why. So I appreciate that if you would do that. The modified sports piece, I'm curious to know, as well as the unified sports, those answers to my questions, because my hope in using unified and modified was to make sure that we have a student base that are moving into our next steps. And wrestling and cross country, we've been doing cross country for years. Okay, so I'm glad, but wrestling is new. We've had some success with that. But what happened to the football program? It was supposed to be up and running for this year, coming for the school year of 24-25. It was supposed to be big. I thought we were going to get those little tights and get them locked in, and they'd be our babies forever. So just asking those questions. Other than that, I'm monitoring what's happening in my own district. I am concerned that similar to what board member Vice President Scott said, I am concerned about the equity piece not being adequately shared. And I'm very concerned about one of my schools, School 84. I dare anyone deny School 84 any resources. And the fact that that school could be painted with the same brush as every other brush tells me that this system that we have, this budgeted system, is based on people and not children. And that's the part that has to be fixed. Okay, we're doing our presently the board is doing the student governments, the student leadership that we're doing, the student governance. We're focusing in on data. The first thing they tell you is that everything generates from the classroom, the data generates. And everything we've been talking about, which is what budget people do, is about removing bodies and not talking about resources. So I'm looking forward to see how this gets adjusted. And in the past, Dr. Williams, I don't know what's going on with you, but in the past, the superintendent easily had $5 million in their pocket hidden. So I'm surprised that nobody's told you about that. That was a good one.
That's just what I need.
That money. She found that money all the time. So I'm letting you know that's what has always existed. There was a pot of gold, some money stored for the superintendent. So I don't know what they're telling you, but I'm just telling you.
All right. Thank you.
Oh,
Thank you.
Okay, Ms. Cotman.
Yes.
So, Mrs. Cotman, now you got me in trouble with the superintendent.
I'm just letting her know. Okay, she normally should have a pot of gold somewhere that she could spend some money. Okay, thank you.
Board Member Schuler, you're up.
Hi, Mr. Barnes, thanks for the presentation. And I'm just wondering, could you explain to us those 91 vacancies? Are they vacancies because they weren't needed, or did we not have the staff? And my question is, what impact do those 91 vacancies have on students in schools?
Good question, and I don't know if my answer will be adequate. The 91 are based upon not being filled and not needed, both. We're digging down deeper into this. But at the same time, we're removing those vacancies. The superintendent is meeting with the board. Well, before that, all the schools get the resources allocated in these school-based budgets, baseline,
Right.
they get that. Above and beyond this book, there were FTEs at each and every school, well above these numbers. 91 of them were vacancies. We're cutting them.
Okay.
Then the superintendent meets with the board members to review equity requests, FTE add backs. So the sum of all that will come up with the final school-based budget, but then we're cut out of the FTE excess that are at the schools that are above and beyond the school-based budget formulas.
Okay. Okay. Now I understand. Thanks. That explains it. I agree with your comment about how this is going to be a very difficult time for human resources. I'm aware that the transfer process is beginning. And I know that that's going to be a lot of bumping, and I do appreciate any work anyone's doing. I want to talk a little about the TOSA and the coach positions. And I don't know if people saw the article in the paper this past week about South Park High School and its long journey. And one of the core pillars of school improvement at South Park High Schools were trained TOSAs and coaches that then in turn turnkeyed it to our classroom teachers, and then developed that culture of school improvement and teaching improvement, and which then transformed into students being able to graduate. So before we think that they're not directly in classrooms, if they're properly used, they are invaluable. So I'm going to be with the board looking at what we think about down the line. And when it comes to assistant principals, and I agree with Mr. Scott, each school is different. Each school has different needs. And I know, and we know behaviors since COVID have been very difficult. Schools have been having difficulties maintaining order. And what we have found is that when kids can have a relationship with an administrator, not only in times of behavior, that behavior improves. So those are a couple things that I just wanted to put my thoughts into. But thanks very much, guys.
I agree, Board Member Schuler, and in addition, when we're looking at assistant principals, we have now evolved detectors that are in schools, and some of our children get to schools very early before staff start, but it usually is an assistant principal that is able to get there early enough so that the children don't have to stand outside and wait until the official start of the school day happens. So there are lots of things that, that we have to consider. For the TOSAs, I couldn't agree more. TOSAs are very invaluable, whether they are outside of the classroom or, if they're in a classroom, working directly with the children. But, we just know that at the end of the day, we'll all have to make some really difficult decisions because we won't be able to keep everything. But, the equity piece comes into play where I hear you saying for South Park, what South Park needed, or what Southside needs, or what East needs, or what 53 needs.
Right.
It may be very different than
Right.
what McKinley needs or another school needs. So, but we have the baseline, and so from the baseline, we begin building.
And that's why I would agree with you that that's why it's so important. I remember those days, and I'm sure you do, Dr. Williams, when we would get a list of what we were getting, and it perhaps wasn't what we particularly needed for our school. I like that schools are now able to sit down with their teams and decide and their parents what fits there. And
Yes.
I think that that's been a nice evolution, and I know that we're not going to be able to give everybody everything they need, but I just want, to make sure that a lot of the things with the TOSAs and the coaches is really the tone that's sent by the administrator in the building. If they're told, so I just want to make sure that we don't minimize their impact.
Mm-hmm. Yep. Thank you.
Thank you, Board Member Shuda. Go ahead.
Paulette's hand is up.
Oh,
I just wanted to commend the superintendent and Mr. Barnes, our CFO, on doing just what the governor did. When the cliff is too big, spread it over 2 years. So that was very smart. It will cost us an extra $41 million in next year's fund balance, but that was smart. That cliff was way too hard to do in 1 year. But the questions that I'm getting is if schools and direct services, student achievement is what we're talking about, direct services to the schools. What I'm getting from my schools is that if you cut any live bodies from the schools where they're working with the kids, then they want to see some equity, that everybody doesn't just get 40 vacant positions. If you want them to lose a teacher, if you want them to lose a teacher or aides or staff directly serving schools, they want to see that all of these other central administration functions, that if we lost 10% of our students, if we lost 44,000 out of 40,000, if you're saying we lost students and everybody is working with fewer students, fewer data, fewer. So they want to see live cuts, not just vacancies, and everybody else. That means central office, that means shared accountability, that means whatever, family and housing and all of the central programs. Eyes are watching, and they want you to know how you treat the schools, which is the primary source of student achievement. They want equity in that. So that's one of the questions I sent. Are those for cuts in central administration just vacancies? Well, then I hope we're not going to have anything but vacancies cut everywhere else. The other thing I wanted to share, there is in this body that they gave us, this is a very smart budget. There's a $10 million equity hole for the superintendent. She's not being shortchanged. It's in there.
Go ahead, Paulette. You got it.
And, the only other thing that my schools are telling me and are saying is that when principals had to make choices when they had to make choices to meet the budget. We always hear this, I made the budget, but I couldn't afford to lose my AP because I lose control of my school. So I put my AP in. So what did you cut? What I'm hearing and people are not happy with, we promised to teach the whole child. So the cuts are coming down to music. They're not going to have their plays. They're not going to have their music teachers. They're not going to have their little bands. The cuts are going to be to the whole child philosophy that we've been pushing, and I know you support. So when I meet with you, that's what I'm going to be looking for. Equity, and whole child. And I thank you both. I think you did a great job on this budget.
Thank you. Thank you. And I just want to share, I did meet with principals last month because I really don't want the feeling of an us versus them, you know, schools versus central office. It's been around, this is my 34th year, and it's probably been around forever. But it takes all of us to move the data for our children. So, you know, I don't minimize the work that the central office staff do. It's really important. People want to get paid. They want to get paid on time. So, you know, but we are looking at different departments. I've already requested information from staff. So, you know, it's all of us. It's all of us that are going to feel, you know, some shift.
Is it?
Cindy, I don't see any other hands.
All right.
Okay, I know Board Member Hurd did have one follow-up question.
And is on the
Oh, well, I know people were putting their hands up on the screen. Yeah.
Okay, yeah, my follow-up question. I'm big on our reserves and holding our reserves and making sure that we have money just in case emergency happen or a capital project might come up that we might have to take on. You know, boilers break, incidents happen. How much of our reserves will we go into before we say it's a stop?
Okay, rough guess, you always need 4 months of operating expenses at a minimum. That's, I'll get you that number, but where I think above and beyond the formula, you can't drop below 200 million.
So we put in an estimate about $200 million that should always remain in reserve.
Correct.
Okay. Okay, I just want to make sure we get a note on that. And just the thing to add on too is that we always talk about equity. We're talking about how to, you know, assert, you know, programs across the district, you know, equally amongst our students and classes and buildings. One thing I would like to see, if we have to go into our reserves for anything, is that giving every student, by the time they junior year, opportunity to do a college tour. That hasn't been done, and there's some families that I talk to that can afford to take their children across country to different colleges, different universities, and we're not seeing that, you know, to all of our students and not affording that opportunity. So a lot of our students are not, you know, haven't left the city of Buffalo or seen other areas for higher education. And I think that we need to take a bigger look into that if we're going to go into our reserves for anything. And that should be something that should be, like I said, equitable for every single student, at least by the time they junior year, as they move forward to higher education.
Duly noted.
Okay, thank you.
As we close it out, you know, once again, thank you to you and your team. Just the last thought I want to put out there, or question, and it may not be an answer this time, I don't know, or maybe it will be, because you seem to be the man with all the answers. So as we, it's like, please don't say that. As we move, you know, onward through this process of student outcome focused governance, we heard Board President Kottman mention it. We know we have goals this year. You shared them at the beginning of your presentation. The superintendent touched on them. We're going to be, you know, evaluating those goals as we continue to embark on the listening session, setting new goals for the new year. But I guess my question is, we're going through this process. Are we going to have leeway in the budget? Because we do want to make sure the budget supports goals, right? And there's going to be ability to work within that as goals modify, shift, move.
Yes, I would think so.
Cool. That was really it all.
I got one question for Mr. Hurd. Are you still talking to me after the presentation?
Yes, sir.
Okay.
You talk
You threatened me earlier.
Madam Superintendent, I don't know if you have anything that you want to share to close us out. All
No,
right.
I don't have much. I just want to say thank you to the board for your thoughtful questions. I think that, they always put a little bit more on my mind. So I'm looking forward to our meetings tomorrow, and I know that there will be more questions in coming weeks. Thank you, Chief Barnes. You and your team have done a fantastic job, and thank you, Chairwoman McEachen.
Thank you. Thank you. I am going to hand it over to Board Member Terry Shuda for educational support, and it does appear, Terry, that Leslie is on the call.
Okay, great. I know that this was going to be a long meeting, and when I was brought up that maybe we would just do this part, but I thought it was really important for us to keep our stride as we're going through this implementation process with Leslie. And so we're going to, if the superintendent, if you have something to say, we're going to talk more about the timeline and how we're heading in the listening tours. So superintendent, do you have anything?
No,
you'd
I'm
like
excited to hear about the listening tours. I've been hearing bits and snippets of some good stuff. Hopefully the board is hearing some good information from the community and what it is they want to see. So I'm looking forward to hearing.
Okay, great. Mm-hmm. Leslie, are you ready to join in?
I'm here. How are y'all?
Good, good, good.
Can you hear okay?
Yes.
Okay, cool. So thank you for making time for this conversation. I know I proposed two things that are essential sort of in our timeline that are really current. One is to do some, start the process of, in earnest, doing some time use evaluations. And the purpose for a time use evaluation is to actually align what you are prioritizing. What you spend your time on is an example of your priorities. It is a showcase of what what you are concentrating on. And so doing a quarterly time use evaluation or a monthly time use evaluation is really an essential piece of this work. Because unless you understand how everything is aligned, how you're coming together as a board, how you're bringing staff together to support you as a board, then there's not a sight into how you may adapt that to become more focused on what you say you want to do, focused on the student outcomes. So before we do that, though, because I really wanted to go over that, and before we do that, I wanted to just take a minute to touch on a couple of things that that are on the table now. So you did mention the listening sessions. I know that we have, there have been 3 or 4 that have occurred already. I think there's about 6 more maybe on the books through the end of April. It looks like everything is scheduled to be done by the end of April. So thank you. There's a couple that aren't scheduled yet, I believe. So if you can make sure to keep updating that spreadsheet so that you're all aware of when those happen and whatnot, that would be very helpful. And if there are any questions from any of you at any point in terms of, like any feedback you're getting from ones you've hosted, you want to give your colleagues or anything, please do so. If you want to have a touch base, have another conversation around the script or whatnot, please do that as well. And again, we did provide the script because we wanted to make sure that everyone who is coming to you is getting the same information from you. So thank you all for doing that so far. I did know that, I think there was I know I worked on a script for a video. I think there was talk of recording a video. So I was just going to check on that. The purpose of that would be to get spread easier. We know that we're not going to have people who are able to come in bodily form to do this. And we want to make sure that we reach out as wide as we can to the Buffalo community to let them know what you're doing, why you're doing it, and to have the opportunity to fill out that form to give their set of priorities. So I'm just wanted to inquire about the video. If y'all have done that, posted it, how are you getting that out?
That's a good question. Madam Superintendent, can you find out what's going on with Jeff and that video? Because I'm pretty sure it should be completed at this point.
Yeah, I just texted him. I believe he's still here in the office and will be jumping on. I believe
He's actually here right now. He's coming up.
Okay.
Do you want him to come to the podium to provide an update? Is that easier?
Sure.
Okay, yeah.
Okay, the video was produced and the video was edited and the video was posted last week and the video is on the main homepage of the Buffalo Public Schools websites. So it's readily available for anyone that wants to see it. It includes the QR code where those who can't attend the meeting can click on that and provide their feedback. So it's done.
Okay, so it is up on like the homepage?
It's right on the main homepage, yes.
Okay. And just is there a strategy in board members as well in terms of how you're going to, you know, everybody might not come across the homepage of the website. Is there a plan to send that out to the community?
You want to link it to like our social media or anything like that where we can get just the video?
I sent the video to all the board members, so you have the original video. If you don't want to pull it from the website, you have the actual original video in your email, and you can, if you want to post it on social media or you have other groups that you'd like to share it with, it's readily available for you to share.
Awesome. Thank you.
Is it district? I'm just sorry. I just want to make sure. Is the district comms team, y'all have a little more reach than the board members individually may? Or do y'all have a strategy for doing that as well?
It's on the district website.
Any, you know, like any chance to get it, you know, out? I will just say it's really important to get this far and wide. So far, from the 4 meetings you have, I think, I've gotten 26 responses. So, you know, you don't want to base this important work on a very small number. So the more people you can get engaged, the more people you hear from, the more ways you can think of to, you know, get this far and wide, the better off the numbers are going to be. So that's, we want to hear from your community.
We're happy to amplify it through, you know, our various channels.
Question, where do we see, if we give these forms to people, we give them that scan and they scan it, how do we see how many responses have been coming up? Because in our training, somebody said South Carolina got 6,000 responses. How do we know how many responses have gone on that?
Yep. So we're keeping the form rolling. So if you want to check in with me, you can. I'm happy to share that with y'all. Right now, there's 26.
Okay, I have a question. So I was unaware, not visiting the website every day, that the video was up. So I couldn't share it on my pages. But each and every department has a social media channel, especially the folks like in parent engagement. So my suggestion is that if let the board members know that it's when it goes out, so we can share from those pages, and I will deliberately get on Facebook and get on, you know, these channels when you let us know you did that. Because my reach, even as on my district page or my district, you know, social media, as well as my personal, would not nearly touch as much. And we'd actually get questions about that video the more and more you guys post. So I don't know, like, if BPTO seems to be able to capture everything that ever goes out sometime before we even know it. And I don't believe it was on their site because I always get their info. So I'm not saying you should have. I'm saying if it's possible, can we connect with those folks? Because then we're able to share on such a wider level. Yeah, because I had no idea. I was unable to, due to my work schedule, I wasn't able to be a part of the video, but I've been kind of waiting to see when it was coming out. So that's just a suggestion. I appreciate it.
2 points. Those are excellent suggestions. As I had said, it is in the email of every board member. We did share both the link to the version on the website, and then also we gave you the original copy of it, so you have it. We will certainly amplify it on social media, and when that gets amplified on social media, we'd be happy to share that with all board members as well.
Thank you
So
so
that
much, and I
you can
apologize for missing the email.
it that way. Yep, happy to do that.
Yeah, and just again, trying to think of unique ways to reach communities that are typically underrepresented. The ones that you have listed, the meetings that you're having, you have a couple of meetings, making sure that I know Board Member Scott, you're hosting 4 that are sort of open, they're quadrant based, and ensuring that the district can help amplify those meetings so that you get really good turnout. I just want to make sure this is a priority of the district, not just the board members, so that the district is helping advertise this project right now. That's
and
portion of the work.
And Leslie, if I can just interject, and to your point, Dr. Carestis and Dr. Reynolds did help in sending out an email to all district users and parents and caregivers in regards to the 4 quadrant open meetings that we're having.
Yeah. And so like following that up with the link, just in case, making sure everybody has access to that QR code, whether they're able to come to your meeting in person or not. You certainly want them in person so that they can have some dialogue if that's, just the conversation is richer if they're there with you. The video is a very truncated presentation, but it still gets the point out. So hand up somewhere.
Dr. Williams.
Yep.
Okay, Leslie, I'm just wondering, so I think, at least for me, I thought initially that the meetings that were scheduled were somewhat closed meetings where there were folks that were invited to come to those meetings. I know that Board Member Scott is having more open meetings for anyone, but has that changed? And now it is, all of the meetings are just open to, whoever would like to come to any of the meetings?
I don't think so. I don't think that was the strategy. Yeah. I mean, if y'all have, they're your meetings. So if y'all had some other strategy, I think they were trying to, the process was the board members, sort of put together a giant list of, groups that they thought could amplify from where they were, and then did light groups together. I think the strategy to have the big quadrant based ones that Board Member Scott brought up was smart, to make sure that, it's if you didn't hit one of these, you can hit one of these. So there's a group that I know is going to be more BPS staff. Yeah.
So I'm just wondering, so if that is the case and we start amplifying the video, are we just asking people to just, when we amplify it, not to go to the meetings per se, but to just take a look at the QR code and share some feedback? Is that the
I think it's important, again, that people come. The video is a stopgap. It's a way to try and catch and fill in. The in-person meetings have a much more context, much more, opportunity for dialogue, much broader understanding of what the process is. So I would absolutely encourage people, come to the meetings in person. I would have the schedule for the ones that are open for quadrants up on the website. I would, but have the QR code for people who are not able to make it to those in person.
So I have Larry, you had your hand up too. You got to follow up.
I just wanted to also add that the other intent in having these open meetings was that if you're not part of our particular group that's invited to these other meetings, you are open to attend and participate. Because sometimes when you're inviting just groups, community-based groups, other type of groups, and you're not a member of those groups, then your voice is not included. So the intent was to include everybody that's maybe not officially part of a group.
And kind of along these lines, this video, I was assuming, and I believe I'm on the right track, but I've been amplifying this as a sense of, if we're having these meetings, we're inviting certain groups, and when I'm making the invites, they're specific to these groups, but I'm also adding that a video will come out that, for folks who weren't able to come. So that's also an open thing. And I think, Dr. Williams, if that's what you were kind of hitting on, is that, you know, if the QR code is open so that anybody at all who couldn't come to any meeting at all, not just from an organization, they have access to that QR code and that's their input. That's what that is, right?
Yes.
That's not an invite to just specific meetings so you can physically be there. That's the alternative if you're not included in these meetings, correct?
Right.
Because that's very much how I've been amplifying how once this video comes out, which apparently everybody has sent to me and I haven't looked at it, so I apologize to everybody. I'm gonna go look at my emails and I'll put it out there that way, but that's how I've been amplifying it, that this is in place of the fact that you maybe, if you weren't invited as an organization, as an individual, see this video and see what we're talking about. Okay,
Yeah.
clear.
But again, I would make a point, you know, again, if the district can help with your comms team to amplify the ones that are open quadrant based, and the dates for those are all in front of us. So if you get together with Board Member Scott, and then make sure that you know, the QR code is in the video are circulated, well circulated. So any other questions about that? All right, so I do have a couple of meetings that I think we got some clarity on. I just letting y'all know the superintendent and her data team are going to be having a small retreat with Ray Hart, who is the head of the Council of Great City Schools, who also comes from a very, very strong background in data, just to help put together some pre-learning in terms of how to best set up the monitoring reports. Y'all are going to be looking at a lot of things more, you know, a lot more formatted for your work in terms of progress monitoring. And so I appreciate them suggesting that and look forward to that. Thank you, Dr. Williams, for making that available as well. We are on target now, and we have every single one of you, Jen and I had a little text, for Friday, August 9th, full day board retreat to set the goals and guardrails. So I don't think there's, I believe everybody is available. Thank you very much for accommodating that. We will be in person, AJ and myself, to lead you through that process. Our hope is that you have, we have the listening session should be done, you know, if something kicks out into May, it does. We don't want to not hear from a group if that happens. But we should be able to get all of that data back. AJ, look through it, summarize it, pull out the key themes. Y'all are going to see every single thing, but also the summary, an executive summary of it as to this is what we believe, you know, the community has said. It will be up to you at that point. Y'all have to understand what the community is saying. You'll have time to review that data. Also, working on, and her team will be working on a critical needs assessment, root cause analysis, sort of a deeper dive into the data, like what the current data is, because it's your job as the board to take what is the current reality for students in our district, where are they right now, and this is where the community says they want them to go, and put that together as a team into goals and guardrails. So the goals, again, are going to be expressing the vision the community wants for the students of Buffalo Public Schools. The values are going to be expressed as guardrails. So please don't do this on your way to accomplishing those goals. So that is what we are planning to do. Hopefully, I think since we've moved out to August on this, I think we have enough time to definitely do the summary. What I would like to do in preparation for that is probably late June through July. I know a lot of people are out in and out. I would like to have a session or two. We have small sessions with a few of you, but that we go over looking at this and how we are, you know, like what the expectations will be when we get to that day. So talking about the different types of data you might be looking at. You know, are you looking at growth goals? Are you looking at comparison? What are the different things you should be considering? Some of you who are in our cohort right now, we've already looked into that a little bit, but I really want y'all to be very keen to what the conversation is going to be when we get there on that day. So So anyway, I'll be reaching out about that as well. Any questions about that? And thank you all again for coming. And Dr. Evans-Brown, thank you for wrangling that one. So, all right. So for the time use evaluation, was anyone able to, I guess, open the document? Who's had a look at it? What are your thoughts?
I gleaned it
Do you
over.
want me to do it on, you want me to share screen on it, or?
Yeah, share screen it, because I think most of us had a snapshot and didn't regurgitate it. I don't want to speak for everybody, but we did have a look at it, and it certainly sounds like it's parallel to keeping a journal, so to speak, that you can go back and, what you have done. So thank you for sharing.
Can y'all see that?
I might have been overthinking it too, because I'm over here like, oh, okay, this is timestamp. Now this is time elapsed in between. I'm over here subtracting numbers, trying to do my SOFG homework. Leslie, you're killing me.
I'm sorry. I know. We're killing you. So the point of this now, this is not, what I've done here is done a worksheet. Our official time use evaluation form is only broken down into the categories of the goals, the guardrails, the monitoring, in terms of the student outcomes, focused governance, the key domains. This worksheet is something you might use in preparation for filling that out. So the worksheet is, and I asked each of you, just make a copy of this worksheet before you start working on it, make your own. So what I did here was I just went back and looked at and randomly pulled a month where we kind of already have begun the work, but it wasn't right on the holiday. So I pulled the month of November. We have 3 meetings during the month of November. So we'll put a link to each of those meetings here in the left column. So you had a committee work session, then another committee work session the following week, and then you have the board meeting. And that's a typical cadence for your month. And then in the second column, like literally list the agenda items, right? So everything that's on the printed agenda to list that out. And then to go through the meeting itself in the video format and try to align, right? So the beginning timestamp where, the agenda item was discussed. This is not easy. This is not easy. You have an enormous consent agenda at your regular board meeting. I have some recommendations about how to reformat this, and I know President Kottman, you and I were maybe going to work on this as one of our projects together in terms of the agenda evaluation, agenda diet. But I just want y'all to look at this now and again, go through it and see if you can, can put the numbers to it. This is 9 hours of time that y'all are officially together. So in this 9 hours of time you spent together in a formally called meeting of the board, how much time was spent dealing with a goal, a guardrail, or SOFG training? So that's the purpose of this. Did anybody get through it or start on it?
Mm-mm.
Yeah.
I started on it and then I was like, I can't.
Yeah. Okay. Well, I do think this is important. I think look at it, give it a good 15, 20 minutes worth of investigation. Because again, I would ask you this is not 9 hours of each of your time only. And, your time is not free. Each of you gives up something to offer your time to Buffalo Public Schools. You may get a stipend for doing this, but your time is by no means free. The number of hours and the time that you are brought together also involves a lot of staff time. A generous amount of staff time, not just this 9 hours that you're actually in meetings, but also prep time for those meetings and then reaction time to those meetings. So I will say again, for the 9 hours in November, y'all spent, I'm going to quit sharing now if y'all, for the 9 hours of time y'all spent together thinking about how much of that time, you know, like staff time and whatever else, and like, what did, you know, like, what are you getting from that? So are you able to, you know, like, would you like to change the expenditure, the way that you spend that time, to, you know, focus more on student outcomes? And if so, that's why we're here. You know, that is the purpose of our work, is to hopefully expedite the things that need to be, you know, brought forward, and to sunset some of the things, strategic abandonment, abandon some of the practices that aren't serving your students. So one of the next step for this, the reason we get the time use evaluation worksheet, this worksheet will translate to the time use evaluation itself. And one of the goals you have is to spend 50% of your time gathered. So that would mean 4.5 hours to gather 50% of that time spent monitoring your student outcome goals, setting or monitoring your student outcome goals. So that's where we want to get to. Just, this is a, you know, sort of a baseline reality check. Okay. Again, I would encourage each of you to take time to really go through this. I will be sending you the board self-evaluation worksheet, which mostly is you going through, working your way. We've done this before as a group, working your way through the framework, just to kind of see, you know, like where you are in terms of moving up in the scoring rubric. So I'll be sending you that probably tomorrow. And that's another thing, you'll make a copy and start working through it yourself, really reading from the manual, you know, like, is this piece of this domain something that we've done yet? Yes or no? Can we move to the next one? So I think y'all remember that process from before. Any questions about this worksheet, how it translates to the time use evaluation itself, and then how that relates to the board self-evaluation? I'm sorry if you can hear my dog whining.
I think we're good with that. No one has any questions?
So is there, you know, we've said this before, and we'll say it again, you know, the purpose of our work with you, your work, you know, delving into this work and wanting to become a board focused on student outcomes is going to take a huge amount of your time and energy. You are sacrificing for future boards so that they step into a process that is streamlined, that is focused, and that is, they're not having to set this up. So your gift is to the future. And our job is to ensure that, you know, you are getting through these steps. We are not here for your comfort, but for your greatness.
So I have a question, more of a statement. So I'm not expecting an answer now, but totally in my feels about one thing that hasn't been clear to me. And that's our fiduciary piece. The responsibility we have as fiduciaries covers everything. And yes, it's all based on student outcomes, but it also covers things that are not directly correlated in the sense that you're talking of student outcomes. And that piece right there, yes, I know it's 50%, so that's the other 50%. As we're being so directed to make sure we focus a certain amount of time on that, I'd like to see us, you know, maybe have a time frame of how much time we spend on that. Being the fiduciary is a huge responsibility of the Board of Education. And sometimes I feel like we have to have those kind of battles internally or together, and not like fights, but we do talk about what one might feel is important to a student outcome or another. We talk about and go back and forth maybe, you know, a little longer than we should. I'd like to see that kind of monitored. But it's also very important that, you know, we as a board have strengthened in my eyes, and anybody can tell me I'm to kick rocks, but we've been stronger in how we communicate. And I feel like in the fiduciary sense, it's important that we spend time discussing where our monies are being spent, how our monies are being spent, making sure that meetings like this that we had with Mr. Barnes and having that extra time to make sure all these questions are in place, that's time consuming. So sometimes I feel like we're battling our time frame so that we can meet the criteria of always looking at just solely student achievement. And I'm sometimes not even asking questions I want to ask because it might cut into the time. Now we're at 51% of the meeting, and I'm going to be the reason. So I'm going to step back. It's happened once already for me. So I just, you know, I'm just in my feels about it. And I'm not saying you have to answer that. I'm just literally putting out that's how,
Yeah.
I don't know if that's a shared concern. You do these trainings everywhere. So if that's something other people are feeling, I'm hoping I resonate with other folks. If I'm unique, then I'm a little surprised.
No,
I would say that you're not in danger of hitting 50% anytime soon. So I can assure you of that. I would say that your role as fiduciary is extremely important. I would
Sorry, excuse me, Leslie. Leslie, I'm sorry. Can everybody please mute? Can everybody please mute because we receive a lot of feedback?
Everyone is muted.
That's
Leslie. Leslie, that's your dog.
That's my dog. Sorry. No, I would charge that your role as fiduciary would be to ensure that the superintendent has given you appropriate strategy and proof that the budget is aligned to the priorities you have asked her for.
That's
so
really good.
if you are requesting monies to be spent in ways that are not aligned to the priorities you have set as a board, you need to think about that. So again, the role is a supportive role in ensuring that she has the resources needed. If you are asking for something dramatic in terms of, you know, a growth in a particular student outcome, and she comes back to you and says, here's my strategy and I can get to this point, and you're saying, no, we want to go further, it is your role as fiduciary to ensure that she has the support and the funding for that. So this is where this interplay is going to happen in terms of your targets. So once you get set on your goals and guardrails and what y'all think you've heard from the community, what you want to do, you have 9 people in Buffalo that get to decide this. It's an extremely privileged position to be in. And once y'all decide that, you give that to the superintendent, and it is her job to execute on that.
So my point is what you just stated is where we want to get to, right? That's not happening in real time right now. So the time that we need to take in order to get to that, you know, wonderful spot of, okay, here's what we're going to do. And that exchange is not happening in real time. We're just learning that through your fabulous training. So I'm just pointing out that that time frame, right, that time frame is going to be, you know, I'm not saying give us a little break, but I'm saying that I want to be more strategic in how we go about it. And if we put monies in, or the superintendent puts something out there, and it's not a battle, like I said, but if it's a discussion and a healthy one that might take more than the 15 minutes allotted because we only have to be at that spot and we're still learning the process, that's where I'm feeling a little tension. But that's what I was trying to say.
Yeah. Yeah.
So yeah, I love what you're saying, and we're the boards that we're working for to make sure we're making this happen for them. That's where they'll be, but we need to get there.
Yeah. I think, again, this process is going to take a while for, you know, various reasons. We're, you know, the timeline we set initially, we're pushing back a bit on it. It's okay. It's where you're at. You know, there's nobody out here besides y'all who are saying we have to meet this or that deadline. This is yours to own, right? This process, whether or not you follow through with this transition, whether or not you do this, timeline, whether or not you choose to, deal with us anymore. I mean, you can call me tomorrow and tell me, get lost. We got other things to do. That is all up to you. So this is a conversation you as 9 people, you as the electeds, you as the representatives of the community have to abide by, and come together on. It is completely up to you. So it's going to take the time it takes, period. And that is okay. But trying to, making sure that we're not shortcutting the process, making sure that we're not undermining the work behind it is really important. Making sure that, if something feels wrong or, just out of line or whatever, that's what I'm here for. I'm not here I'm not your secretary. I'm not your purse holder. I'm not your, that is not my role. My role is to support you in this transition. Y'all have to own it. And my little cheat sheet, I did put together a cheat sheet for y'all, is that website. So it's, can I share? I don't know if I can share links in here. How do we do that? In the
Leslie,
chat.
I thought originally when you first went to our first interview with the Council of Great City Schools, I thought you said one person was going to be a timekeeper, that you're going to designate a person from the board to be the timekeeper.
Y'all can do that if you want. I just needed y'all all to get keen to what you're doing right now. So if y'all choose to do that, you can. If you want to, are you wanting to do it?
The first time.
Are you wanting to do that?
No, I don't want to do it.
Okay, all right.
I'm not interested in that.
Okay.
I was saying that the language that was given to us when we first met was that one person was going to be a timekeeper for the board. But now
it is a fine practice if y'all want to do that. So it is, whoever is interested in doing that work can do that work. So that is your decision to make.
After the board understands what's going on with the time. That's after this exercise, right? Because that's what it boils down to, taking a look at the time that's being done.
You all have to understand this. You all have to understand
that.
Yeah.
Right.
If somebody can do fill out that actual form, you all need to understand from the worksheet, this is the block of time you're spending in the month of November. These are the agenda items you said you would hit. My ask was that you each take a few minutes and look to see, watch the video. Does the video line up with the agenda? And, what are you actually doing? Are there, things being pulled off? Just look at, this is what we said we're going to do for the public. This is what we actually did. The say do, right? Just that say do index. The more you can, get present to that, the more the community will understand what you're doing and why you're doing it and the follow through. Again, that website, I just wish y'all could bookmark that.
Leslie, we just had a meeting. We're in a meeting. We just had a meeting. We spent half the entire meeting on trying to get our budget so that it's going to give resources to the kids. Is that considered working toward a student outcome? If we graded this meeting.
You were not monitoring a student outcome goal during that meeting. And again, I would say that we can have a deeper conversation on the budget at a later time. I think, again, once you get your goals and guardrails set, once y'all determine what you want the superintendent to focus on, then she will bring you strategies. She will bring you the understanding about, this is what you said we're going to do, and this is what we're doing. Like, here's the reality versus what you said. So that's when that conversation starts to happen in earnest. Okay. There's nobody out here who's doing time and, got a stopwatch or a clock or, writing down demerits for anything you're doing. So just know that. Okay. There's nobody out here keeping time to the minute. I need y'all to understand the reality of what you're doing. If you don't want to understand it, then, you do. In order to change behavior, and what do we say? Student outcomes don't change until adult behaviors change. You're 9 people, and if you're going to get present to your current behaviors in order to change those to benefit students, then you have to become aware of your current behaviors. That's all. So no good, bad, no moral. There's no moralizing in this. It's just a reality. How are we present to what we're currently doing? Are our behaviors, our current behaviors, getting us the student outcomes we want? If so, good. If not, we may need to change some things, and that's okay. It's, you know, it's a human process. So, Dr. Rivera, I just wanted you to know, I did put on this website, I put, we have a separate implementation committee meeting monthly, and that was just to save everybody all of the details, but we are, put the minutes up here on the website now, so y'all can know what's going on there. Anybody is welcome to reach out, ask questions about any of that. I also put together a calendar that kind of was helping me figure some stuff out, but I tried to take it through the end of June on here, I think. So anyway, that's on there as well. But if there are things, I mean, this is a public website, you know, I just wanted to have some pieces where you can go find them if you need for this work. If there's something that you think everybody could benefit from that, you know, you want on here, let me know, okay? So next Wednesday during the board meeting, are you in City Hall?
No, we're at Performing Arts.
Okay. It is there, that would the process, I'll facilitate the board self-evaluation. Is that okay for managing that?
During the business meeting?
Yes.
On a business meeting?
Yes.
I would suggest that we would do it during a work session. So maybe we could do it during the first work session in May, which is just a few weeks away.
I thought we were on the agenda for then. So it's the board's agenda. So y'all let me know.
Thank you.
Leslie, can you explain a little bit of what it will entail? I know we went through the process before, but the last time we went through it, it was more seeing the forms for the first time and kind of digesting it as we walked through it, which obviously that took place in a work session because we were learning this process. So what would this look like?
The process will be the same every time. Again, I'm going to send you a worksheet where you can look at it. I want you to go ahead and fill out what you think, you know, I think we're here. But it would be such that we go through every single domain in the Student Outcomes Focused Governance Manual. Again, you can click on the link to that in the website I have for you. Click on the manual. You know what? I'll put the worksheet up here for the self-evaluation as well. But I'm going to send it to you directly as well. That going through every single domain, and you're going to, you know, you're assessing, have we finished everything in this column? So your goal here is to work toward mastering a student outcomes focus, right? If your board is in that blue column, then you're doing everything on the page, which are all the best practices that research has shown us, all of the adult behaviors that add to, or, you know, can assure that you are doing everything you can with yourselves to ensure that the students of Buffalo are successful. So the goal is
it's a shorter process this time because we know we haven't moved very far from the last round to this one, right? Like in terms of achieving the goals to move the pendulum along and shift colors, or for lack of better terms, because they're color coded on that sheet. There's not going to be a whole lot of change. It's more getting us attuned with the process because ultimately this is something we would be doing down the road. Am I understanding that correctly?
Yes. And what I do want, I mean, what we're asking you to do as well is to look forward toward the best practice, right? The far right column, the blue column. Look forward. What are the things we could do to what we're currently doing right now to get there? Right? So what are things we could and should be doing over the next quarter before we have our next evaluation? Marking those, everybody making note of those, and then we'll assign ownership to those.
Okay, so we would fill them, you would issue the evaluation form to us in advance, we fill it out, and then what are you, again,
you're going to all have to agree. You have so you all fill it out individually about where you think you are.
Okay.
Each of you individually says, oh, I think we've done this, this, and this. During the meeting, we have a conversation, and we bring it up. And so it's like, okay, do we think that we've hit this thing yet? Y'all have a conversation. Yes, we all agree on that. Move to the next. So you all have to agree to agreement as a board on where you are with that. I'll be taking the quarterly, the final one. At some point I'll turn that over to y'all, but I'll, keep track of the quarterly score. You also will, again, have to agree, we think we could get here next quarter, right? We think in the next 3 months, we might be able to accomplish this piece. And then you'd have a discussion about who owns that.
Got it. Okay, I'm following. That makes a lot more sense to me.
Okay. Yeah, sorry. Yeah, it's a lot. It is a lot. So,
I guess my question is, before we wrap up, and I don't know what else is on the agenda to discuss this evening, but I think we need to determine if or what that looks like at the board meeting next week, and just officially have consensus on whether or not that is happening, so that it's not left in the air afterwards.
it is the process that we always recommend at a board meeting. You are evaluating yourselves in public, setting the tone, setting the culture for the district. So if you're not prepared to do the evaluation of yourself in public at a meeting in front of the public, you're sending a message.
We're not sending a message until we perfect it. People understand that we're working on things, and I think the work session is the best place for that. At this point, I like the board meetings to start being, we've been abbreviating them, cutting them down, trying to get people out within a 2-hour range. But I see nothing wrong with using a work session for this until we get it under control. You have people who are taking classes, and you guys can weigh in on it and how you feel about it. But I think a work session works better for that, and business should be conducted at the business meeting until we get a handle on what we're doing. I am concerned about, as usual, how that will project to the public at this stage. Okay.
Well, I don't think that the pendulum has moved much, because we're in the throes now of these listening sessions. And I don't know if those questions are relevant on the self-evaluation with the listening sessions. I can't remember. Are they?
You mean, is hosting the listening sessions?
Yes, that's something that we self-evaluate on. Is it pertaining to the listening sessions?
Yeah, you haven't completed.
That's not captured.
Yeah.
It's not captured there, right?
No, and you haven't completed them, so yeah.
Correct. And what else is not captured is the classes that most 5 of us are participating in. So a lot of things aren't captured, and I get that we have to, it's good to self-evaluate, but I don't think that we're capturing the totality of this process.
Leslie, can I ask, tell us, could you maybe share with us is where we're in comparison to other places? Is this a usual way, or I don't know if this is the implementation hurdle sometimes that we have to come over, or what does this look like and what are we facing?
First answer is it's irrelevant. You are Buffalo. You are unique. You are, you are where you're at. The fact that you're engaged in this work and moving forward is wonderful. You're hosting listening sessions. You're moving forward. We are moving down the timeline. There have been some drags on it, and it's, it is what it is. So there's no harm, no foul. You're moving forward. So.
Okay, yeah. Thank you.
So, I'm sorry, Terrence. Let me just ask this real quick. The evaluation, I don't know if it was something I was supposed to look at before I asked this question, but our self-evaluation, wouldn't it be based on a lot of what we're dealing with right now? Is that what you're getting at, Kathy? Like, the self-evaluation is basically what we're dealing with now. I feel like after the process of at least the listening tours, you know, being paired up with people that maybe we wouldn't have as a board worked together with, you know, being in community in a way that we haven't before. Just this whole process in itself, I feel like the evaluation would come at least after we've conducted all the meetings. And I do agree that whether it's in a work session where we would have so much more time to address to this, either way it's public, right? It's a public session. So I don't believe, and someone correct me if I'm wrong, that our work sessions, it's not closed door right now to the community, correct? It's just people don't normally come. So this is also an opportunity to bring people into work sessions. So I see, and I tend to agree with President Kottman that the work session is where we should dedicate this work to. I feel like we're actually hindering ourselves in doing the work in a business meeting because there's so much entailed in the agenda that we're already trying to diet ourselves on, right?
Ms. Micosi, this is Will. Just to your point, you're absolutely correct. For example, at most of our work sessions, the media attends and is covering the business of the work session, and the public is watching on the live stream. Sometimes more are watching on these live streams than attend in person at our board meetings. For example, what happened tonight during the finance and ops meeting. So yes, just a reminder, it's a good reminder that this is a public meeting, just like a business meeting.
My thought though is, I'm having this feeling. We've hired a national consultant to lead the work, and they have their advice on how we should be doing it, and we think we know better, and they've done the work before. And that I just wonder then why we're in the work if we're not following their lead on how it should be done. But I get what we're saying, but I just thought we were in it and we were going to use them as our guide. But maybe that's, I don't know, that's just a thought I'm getting right now. And I'm not sure if that's, because I can just see if we continue this road, we're going to be nowhere. We're going to be nowhere for another month, and it's going to be another year. And I could see this like falling off the edge and we don't accomplish anything.
I disagree with that, Terry. There's a lot of work. A lot of people are working behind this. You've got 4 board members that are taking their personal time every 2 weeks to try to learn more about this. They're doing that on their own time. Just because the consultant makes a recommendation does not mean that the board does not have the option to see what works best for them. My reason for saying what I said is that at a board meeting, we're interested in passing the agenda and moving forward. If we're at a committee meeting, we have time that we can sit down, ask questions, and spend as much time as we want on the issues. How do you grow if you don't have time to develop it and ask the questions and move forward? So you guys decide what you want to do. The last recommendation I made ended up in the funny papers because it was not followed. I do not want the same scenario happening
during a work session too.
Yeah, right. And I don't want the same thing to happen when we don't have the time to work through it. That's all I'm saying. That's the only reason. Nobody's trying to discount anything that anyone is doing, but we have to tailor everything we do to our culture and our community. And just because the consultant makes a recommendation does not mean that the board does not have the option to work what works best for them. And that's the point here. Okay, at this point. So let the board decide what they want to do, and we live with it. But if you don't have the time, I'm not going to sit there for 2 hours or an hour and a half trying to let you figure this out during a board meeting, because at that point I've got staff that has been working from 6 o'clock in the morning. They want to go home. Tonight they're scheduled for 2 hours. Hopefully we'll get them home 3 hours what we got, 3 hours? We got them for tonight. Hopefully we'll get them home. 4 hours, is it, Larry? But hopefully we'll get them there. So you guys do what you want to do. But just because the consultant makes a recommendation does not mean that it's the absolute. Okay, we have to tailor it to our needs. And I'm thinking that a work session wouldn't give us more time to do the work. That's what I'm thinking.
Okay, point taken. Point taken.
Thank you. Thank you, Terry.
And I just want to voice that I agree that a work session would be a more appropriate place to have that discussion and self-evaluation.
So I have would request that we get things on the agenda then, just so we can get them calendared. If you're not going to be doing this next Wednesday, let me know when you're going to be doing it. I will go ahead and send the sheets so you can start work on those. But just please let me know as soon as you can when you're going to put this on the agenda. Okay.
Okay. I do have a question going backwards a little. We talked about the community tours, listening sessions, and I do like the format of it. I do like what we've done, but we reached out to a lot of religious organizations, community organizations, and that's going to be a feedback that we're giving back to the superintendent to based upon decisions. A lot of people that's work at these community organizations don't live in the city, and I always felt that if we're going to reach the people, we should have community listening sessions that that we bringing in people from the neighborhood, and so that who have children in the schools or grandchildren in the schools, or is connected to the schools and somehow maybe work with the district or whatever, that can give their side of input, how they feel, what they feel should be, how they can answer those 3 questions. So I know Larry has an open session, which I found out today that's exactly what that meant. But are we going to continue with this tour, or to get some real data or some data that we can use by parents of students?
Well, I think some of our listening sessions include parents. We have a vast list. I thought Cindy and I are doing one with some parents, right, Cindy? At some point,
with yes, Tuesday, I believe it's with all the parent groups.
It's not parents. Parents that's in the school district, not the parent groups.
Correct.
I'm talking about the community that's out there that's has children in the schools that's impacted by it.
Well, that's what Larry's doing, aren't you, Larry? And
yeah, yes.
Yeah.
That's exactly.
I realized today that looking at Larry's schedule, our schedule, I guess, and that's what's happening with parent groups. I'm talking about actual parents.
No, that is
actual
the
people in the community.
Those are parents.
So how many parents have we reached out to? How have we reached out to the community in this aspect?
So I will say and the only it's so relevant to this, so I'm sorry if I interrupted. The invites that I had sent out, the general invite over email, and my follow-up phone calls have been, if you have anyone from your organization who has children in the district, or you have, somebody who just graduated that knows that is part of the organization, I'm encouraging to them to bring folks that are closer to the work, closer to being a student or being a part, a parent in the community. It was my own doing, and as a facilitator, I realized when we started bringing out organizations, we're talking to EDs. Like this, the Buffalo Board of Education is a big deal. So a lot of times organizations, if they're going to send their staffers if they don't feel like it's a big enough deal. But if they feel like they want to be seen or they want to be a part of it, they'll show. And then how the data and what we're trying to communicate gets back to their staff and their base and their constituents is based on whether or not they felt it was important enough. And that's how I feel, but because it wasn't an invite to everyone. We are literally, these are the gatekeepers of the organizations. So I encourage, whether or not that's okay or whether or not I went above it, base, I was encouraging people to send you know, folks that they know are closely connected in some way, shape, or form to the district, because that opportunity is not offered within at least my first meeting. My second meeting is more of the cultural groups where I'm sure they're going to bring in folks who are working within the district and have a connection. But my first group is strictly like organizations where the only way to really reach out was to get to the ED, to get to the folks that may not have a strong connection to us at all. So that was how I went about it.
Terrence, to answer your question about how we're communicating the 4 zone community listening sessions, Dr. Reynolds sent out an email today to all parents and district staff. And then there's another one that's going to go out the 13th, the 18th, and the 21st.
Thank you. Okay. Thank you. But, you know, also as a group like bus drivers I talk to all the time, they give me calls, or bus aides, you know, they have their struggles also, and they got input they want to give to the district or how things could be simulated correctly, or changes that need to be made.
Terrence, I also have a text that I've been sending out, so people that you talk to, I can forward it to you so you have it if you want, that has like the survey link also. So like people that couldn't come to the meeting or express that they're unable to attend them but still want to provide feedback, I've been sending the text that gives them the access to the digital form so they can just, I mean, because it's pretty short, it's only the 3 questions, and they can fill it out and share their feedback so it still gets recorded.
Okay, great.
And I'll send that to you.
Cindy, would you
And I think
mind?
I recall y'all having a staff, sorry, I think I recall y'all having a meeting that included staff. So I would hope that that would get broadcast to all the staff.
Cindy, would you mind sending that text to all of us?
Yeah, that's fine.
Thank you.
Thanks.
But again,
And I
thank you for
just-
bringing it up.
Thank you.
Sorry.
Thank you, Leslie. I just wanted to say, keep in mind that it is the community as well. Tomorrow, Ann and I are going doing something with Say Yes, but on Friday, Paulette and I are doing something with over 50 employers. Okay, and so no, they're not from the city. And many of them may have kid, family, or relatives here, but the bigger issue is this group of people are the ones who are going to hire our students. So they have an important voice as well. And we want to definitely capture that because it's important, because they will, you know, tell us what they're expecting as well. So it's a community thing, and our community should just not be limited to Buffalo. It should be limited to Western New York or the world if we're preparing children for so. So let's keep in mind of that too. Thank you.
Leslie, I do want to just add the date for the agenda would be May 1st to do the board self-evaluation. Dr. Crestis.
Okay.
Yep, just
Time?
confirm the date.
Okay. You can, yeah.
Do we know it time? 5 o'clock.
5. Okay. Okay. I will send you the sheets, and then again, I encourage you to reach out if you have questions about how, any more questions about how that process would happen. Okay.
And
That'll give you a little
Leslie,
more time.
would you also like to maybe look at the time evaluation at that time also?
The time
Or you
use
wanna do
evaluation,
that
we could.
before? Yeah, time use.
Yeah, I will send that. I'll send the form. It's in the Student Outcomes Focused Governance Manual.
Right.
Those forms are all in the manual. But I will send you a copy of the time use evaluation form itself. So you can look at that because I think it's important. It's not going to be a very long one. I would recommend, again, the time use evaluation in the framework is for a month. I would recommend using the November one that I sent you as a way to capture that information and then translate it to this. So I'll send you all an email with instructions about those 3 pieces. Okay. But effectively the worksheet feeds up into the time use evaluation, and then the worksheet for the board self-evaluation we will do at that meeting. Okay.
And the other thing I think it would help, Cindy, as implementation committee chair, if when Leslie or some new information comes out, if you could just maybe text it to the group or whatever and let us know check your emails, and that might help some lag time, and people will know, because a lot of times people are not at their computers. Okay, I think if we put that in, that might help speed up some things. Thanks.
Okay, are we finished here, Leslie, would you say, or is there anything else?
Everything I wanted to cover, everything I wanted to cover. So again, if there's any questions about any of the upcoming work, let me know. And just want to make sure you all have a link to that website, and that you keep that where you can find it, because I'll try to keep relevant, fresh things on there, okay?
Okay, Cindy, is there anything you'd like to add, or Dr. Evans-Brown, as part of the implementation committee? That I appreciate your hard work. Those of you, I've been out of the loop. I'm stepping back in, and I just appreciate all your support. It's been really hard. So, Cindy, is there anything else you'd like to add?
The only thing I just want to highlight is, as we go into the next phase of the listening sessions, just please remind everybody, and I know I reminded folks, and I find that I'm following up like crazy, to fill out the digital form, because there's two options at the listening session. We give them the paper copy that they can handwrite their thoughts on. If they do that, it's important we take that form, and then we are responsible to add that into the survey link individually, one by one. So every time you fill one out, then you have to open it back up again and fill out another survey for the next piece of paper, which is definitely time consuming. So we want to strongly encourage them to fill it out digitally using the link. And the reason is that AJ is the one who goes through and deciphers all the data, and obviously a digital copy of that is the way that is best achieved, right? For him to be able to go through and look at all of the information and be able to provide then us with kind of a condensed report of what that looks like and what our themes are and all of that stuff. So I know I've only had one listening session so far, and it has been such a large amount of follow-up, trying to get those in attendance to have filled out their sheets. Most of our folks chose to take them with them. And despite my request to leave them with me, assuring me they were going to fill it out, and then they didn't. So lots of follow-up is happening. So I just encourage you, please, please, please stress that. And I learned from the first meeting, do not let them walk out with that sheet, because they do not fill it out afterwards and go in and do the survey. So that's just my 2 cents to share as you're moving forward.
All right. Dr. Williams, is there anything, or Dr. Evans-Brown, did you want to add anything?
I just want to thank all of my colleagues on this panel for participating in the survey to find out when we can hone in a time for the retreat. I mean, is it retreat?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yes, full day.
So, yeah, it's late. And so, yeah, so this is a lot of moving parts. It's a lot of work. And so we're striving for excellence, and we will get there. So thank you.
Thank you. Dr. Williams, would you like to close it up for us?
I think it was a good discussion, very rigorous, very good. I'm excited about where we're going. I think this is just part of the process, and we just all have to trust the process.
Okay. All right. Okay, everyone have a good night. It's been nice seeing and back in dialogue with you. So have a good night, everyone.
All
Thank
right.
you,
Thank you.
Welcome back, Terry. Welcome
Thank
back.
you so much.
Welcome back, Terry.
Have a good night.
Thank you.
Welcome back, Terry.
Thank
Good night,
you. Thank
everybody.
you. Thank you.